Martha never expected her legs to betray her. At 72, she could still manage light gardening, walk to the mailbox, even carry her groceries up the porch stairs, until one rainy afternoon, as she reached for the top step, her knee buckled and she fell hard onto the cold cement. Her neighbor helped her up, and though she insisted she was fine, inside she knew something had shifted. Later that night, with an ice pack pressed to her thigh, she replayed the moment over and over. It wasn't just the fall. It was the slow decline she'd ignored for years, the moments she needed both hands to rise from a chair, the times she paused halfway up the stairs, the cramping at night that she blamed on age, but what she hadn't realized, and what her doctor would later confirm, was that her body had been giving her warnings for months. Not loud ones. Quiet, creeping ones. Warnings caused not by age, but by everyday choices that were weakening her legs from the inside out. She wasn't eating the right way. She was skipping key nutrients. She wasn't moving enough. And some of the habits she thought were harmless, like sitting for too long or avoiding nighttime snacks, were actually draining her muscles of strength. Her doctor called it the functional loss, a polite way of saying her legs were giving out before she noticed. But the damage wasn't permanent. Not yet. Martha's story isn't rare. It's common. And the tragedy is, most seniors don't know the 7 small mistakes that chip away at their strength until it's almost gone. But once she saw them, she changed everything. Because leg strength isn't luck. It's built daily, quietly, through choices, just like the ones Martha was finally ready to make, starting with what she put on her plate that very night. Martha used to eat dinner around 5 o'clock, often something small, half a sandwich, maybe soup, or some toast and tea. She'd always believed that light dinners were better for digestion, especially at her age. But what she didn't know was that this habit, repeated night after night, was starving her muscles while she slept. Her doctor explained it gently. After 60, your body doesn't store or process protein the same way. You actually need more, not less, to preserve muscle mass, and especially in the evening when the body enters its repair cycle. Without enough protein before bed, your muscles don't recover. They shrink, they weaken, and they lose their ability to support you. Martha had never thought about what her legs were doing at night, but the truth was, they were trying to rebuild from the day's activity, and she was sending them to work with nothing. Her new routine was simple: a few hard-boiled eggs, a scoop of cottage cheese, or Greek yogurt with chia seeds, just enough to deliver amino acids and fuel tissue repair. Within a week, she noticed fewer cramps at night. Within 2, she felt steadier getting out of bed in the morning. What surprised her most wasn't just how effective it was, but how overlooked this step had been her whole life. No one had told her that muscle loss after 60 wasn't inevitable. It was preventable, but only if you gave your body what it needed when it mattered most. She began looking at dinner, not as a wind-down meal, but as a restoration. And every time she added protein to her plate, she felt like she was feeding more than her hunger. She was feeding her independence. And for Martha, that mattered more than calories or convenience ever could. It wasn't until Martha began tracking her progress that she realized something even more alarming. Her nighttime medications were silently working against her legs. For years, she'd taken a common acid reducer for heartburn, a low-dose diuretic for blood pressure, and occasionally a sleeping pill when her mind refused to rest. None of these seemed dangerous, but her doctor pointed out that several of them were stripping her body of exactly what it needed to stay strong. The acid reducer lowered her ability to absorb vitamin B12, essential for nerve function and muscle coordination. The diuretic flushed out potassium and magnesium, 2 minerals that prevent cramping and help with muscle contraction. The sleeping pill, while calming, sometimes left her groggy and less likely to move during the day. All of this added up to silent depletion. Her muscles weren't just being starved, they were being drained. And the worst part? She hadn't connected any of it to her leg weakness. The doctor explained how common this was. Most seniors take medications that interfere with nutrient absorption, yet very few are advised to adjust their diet or supplement routine accordingly. Martha made a few small changes. She shifted her medication timing. She added a B12 supplement after breakfast and started drinking coconut water twice a week to replenish electrolytes. She also made sure she never took her diuretic without a magnesium-rich meal, like oatmeal with almonds or spinach sautéed in olive oil. It was simple, gentle. No overhaul needed. But within weeks, she felt less stiff. Her legs didn't ache after long walks, and most importantly, she felt in control. For the first time, she wasn't just managing symptoms, she was correcting the root. Her medications hadn't betrayed her, but they had required a partner, and Martha was finally stepping up to be that partner. There was one habit Martha had perfected over the years without even thinking about it: sitting. She sat after breakfast. She sat while watching her shows. She sat during her phone calls with her daughter, during dinner, and often after. The problem wasn't sitting itself. It was sitting too long without moving. Her doctor called it micro-inactivity, the slow breakdown of muscle fibers from long periods of stillness, especially in the legs. Every hour spent in the chair without standing or stretching allowed her quadriceps and hamstrings to weaken, her blood flow to slow, and her balance to suffer. She had no idea how much strength she was losing just by being still. The solution wasn't to stop sitting, but to interrupt it. Her physical therapist suggested a simple rule. Every 30 minutes, stand up. Walk to the sink. Stretch the calves. Shift your weight from one leg to the other. Even a minute of movement could restart circulation and remind her muscles they still mattered. Martha set a timer at first. Then it became second nature. She added a small stepper near the television and began pressing her fan against it during commercials. In the kitchen, she stood while reading recipes instead of pulling out a chair. The results were subtle but steady. Her legs no longer felt like sandbags at the end of the day. Her steps grew lighter, her posture taller. The stairs that once required 2 hands and a deep breath became manageable again. It wasn't exercise, it was awareness. A willingness to respect her legs enough not to leave them idle for hours at a time. Inactivity hadn't knocked her down in a day. It had crept in silently. But now, every time she stood with purpose, she stood against that silent erosion. And her legs stood stronger because of it. The muscle cramps used to wake Martha in the middle of the night like a jolt, sharp, sudden, and impossible to ignore. Sometimes it was her calf tightening like a coiled wire. Other times, a spasm that shot through her thigh and left her breathless. She'd rub it, stretch it, sip water, and eventually fall back asleep, blaming it on age or maybe the weather. But once she began paying attention, she realized those cramps were more than just discomfort. They were warnings. Her body was low on the very minerals that muscles rely on to function: magnesium, potassium, and calcium. The cramps weren't random. They were signs of imbalance. And every night she ignored them. Her muscles weakened just a little more. Her doctor explained how common this was in seniors. As the body ages, it doesn't retain or absorb nutrients as efficiently. Medications, low appetite, and limited variety in meals can leave older adults depleted without even knowing it. Martha took action. She started incorporating magnesium-rich foods like pumpkin seeds, leafy greens, and dark chocolate. She added bananas and sweet potatoes for potassium, and made sure she got calcium through yogurt or almond milk. Just a few adjustments. But they made a world of difference. The cramps subsided. Her sleep improved, and she woke up with legs that felt more rested, less sore, and more prepared for the day. What amazed her most was how preventable it had been all along. The pain that once seemed inevitable had a cause and a solution. Martha learned that leg health wasn't just about movement or strength. It was about what she was feeding her muscles from the inside. And once she gave her body the right support, it responded like it had just been waiting to feel whole again, one quiet night at a time. It was a cold morning when Martha slipped while walking from her bedroom to the kitchen. Not a dramatic fall, but enough to shake her. Her heel had caught on the edge of a rug, and her bare foot offered no grip, no support, nothing to ground her. She caught herself on the doorframe, but her heart raced for minutes afterward. That's when her daughter, visiting later that week, gently asked, "Why don't you wear shoes inside?" Martha had always gone barefoot indoors. It felt comfortable, natural, but she didn't realize that as her feet aged, she'd lost padding, flexibility, and nerve sensitivity, making her more vulnerable with every step. Her doctor confirmed it. Walking barefoot, especially on hardwood or tile, increases the risk of slips, missteps, and muscle strain for seniors. The feet are the body's foundation, and when they lack support, everything above them suffers: balance, alignment, leg strength. Martha made a small change that had a big impact. She purchased a pair of supportive, non-slip house shoes, lightweight but cushioned, with arch support and a snug grip. Within days, her posture improved. Her legs didn't tire as easily walking across the house. She even felt less pressure in her knees and hips. It was such a small thing. Shoes. Something she hadn't even thought of. But they gave her confidence, protection, and stability she hadn't realized she was missing. Each step felt firmer, safer, more intentional. Martha realized that sometimes leg strength isn't just about exercises or vitamins. It's about respecting the little things that hold you up. And for her, those soft slippers by the bedside became more than comfort. They became her quiet armor, standing between her and a fall that could have changed everything. For years, Martha had made it a habit to stop drinking water after 6 p.m. She didn't want to wake up for bathroom trips, didn't want to risk accidents, and had always heard it was better to cut off fluids early in the evening. But no one told her what that habit was doing to her legs. Her doctor explained it during a routine checkup. Dehydration, especially overnight, is one of the most common and overlooked causes of leg cramps, joint stiffness, and even dizziness in older adults. Muscles need water to contract and relax properly. Blood needs fluid to carry nutrients. And when the body is even slightly dehydrated, it begins to steal water from muscles, leaving them tighter, weaker, and prone to sudden spasms. That's why Martha had often woken up feeling stiff or sore, even after a full night's sleep. She hadn't thought of water as medicine, but now she did. She started drinking a small glass of water before bed. Not much, just enough to hydrate without overfilling her bladder. She also added water-rich foods in the evening, like cucumber slices, soup broths, and herbal teas. And she began sipping more consistently throughout the day, rather than playing catch-up in the morning. The results came quietly. Then, all at once, the cramping eased. Her legs felt more supple in the mornings, and her energy levels rose too. She realized that staying hydrated wasn't about avoiding thirst. It was about preserving function. Strength doesn't survive in a dry body. Martha's decision to reclaim her hydration routine wasn't just about water. It was about learning to care for her legs with intention, not assumption. Because sometimes the smallest changes, like a glass of water at night, can give your body the one thing it's been waiting for: relief. Martha thought the numbness in her toes was normal. It came and went, mostly at night or when she sat too long. She would wiggle her feet, shift positions, and wait for the tingling to pass. But over time it grew worse. The numbness spread to her calves, her steps felt heavier, and her balance less certain. She didn't panic. She just adapted. Holding railings more often, walking slower, avoiding long trips to the store. But what she didn't realize was that these signs weren't harmless. They were warnings. Her nerves were struggling, and her legs were beginning to forget how to talk to her brain. At her next appointment, the doctor performed a simple reflex test, then looked at her with concern. "This isn't just poor circulation," he said. "It could be early nerve damage, possibly tied to a B12 deficiency or undiagnosed neuropathy." Martha was stunned. She didn't have diabetes. She wasn't overweight. But her blood work told the truth. Low B12, borderline magnesium, and signs that her nerves weren't firing properly. The connection between nerves and muscles was weakening, and if left unchecked, it could lead to falls, injuries, or worse. The treatment? It began with awareness. Daily B12 supplements, richer intake of nerve-supporting foods like eggs, fish, and leafy greens, gentle leg massages to stimulate sensation, and most of all, consistency. Within weeks, the numbness eased. She could feel the floor again. Her steps regained their rhythm. She realized that leg strength isn't just about muscle. It's about communication between your brain and your body. And when your nerves go quiet, your legs follow. Martha had waited too long to speak up, but once she did, she gave her legs their voice back. And with that, she started walking toward confidence again, one steady, connected step at a time. The morning Martha realized she could climb the stairs without pausing was the moment everything changed. Not because she suddenly felt younger, but because she felt stable, grounded in her own body again. It had taken weeks of small changes: protein in the evening, a magnesium-rich snack, slipping on her indoor shoes instead of going barefoot, hydrating with care, stretching. But each choice had built upon the last until her body began to respond with quiet strength. Her daughter noticed it first. "You're moving faster," she said, watching Martha carry folded towels down the hallway. And she was. Her balance had improved. The tightness in her thighs was gone. Even her posture, once curled slightly forward, had straightened. Her muscles weren't just surviving, they were supporting her again. But what struck Martha most wasn't the physical change. It was the shift in her mindset. She no longer saw her body as something failing with age. She saw it as something asking for support, for attention, for nourishment. And once she started listening, it responded. Her nightly routine had become sacred. A light meal with protein, a slow stretch, a glass of water. Her slippers placed neatly by the bed. She no longer feared the nighttime cramps or the morning stiffness or the moment she reached the first stair. Everything was connected now, her sleep, her strength, her choices, and she knew this wasn't a miracle. It was biology. It was consistency. It was proof that even after 60, 70, 80, the body could still heal when given the chance. Martha smiled that morning, standing at the top of the stairs she once feared. Not because she'd beaten time, but because she'd finally worked with it. She had reclaimed her legs, and with them, the freedom she thought she'd already lost. Martha stood at her kitchen window, watching the sun rise over the garden she once struggled to walk through. Her steps were steady now, her breath calm, her legs grounded beneath her like roots she had spent months nurturing. If she could speak to every senior watching her life unfold, she would say this: strength doesn't vanish in one day, and it doesn't return in one night. But it can be rebuilt, not with pain, not with punishment, but with patience, fuel, and respect. The 7 mistakes that had quietly stolen her strength weren't dramatic. They were ordinary. Skipping protein at dinner, taking medications without understanding their cost, sitting too long, forgetting minerals like magnesium and potassium, dismissing tingling in her feet, walking barefoot on cold floors, drinking too little water at night. They were easy to overlook, but powerful enough to leave her clinging to stair railings and fearing the floor in the dark. What changed her life wasn't a supplement or a single exercise. It was deciding that her legs were worth protecting, that her independence was worth preserving. She no longer asked, "Is this just part of aging?" She asked, "What can I still give my body to help it carry me?" And every night before bed, she answered with intention. A simple snack, a long drink, a deep breath, and the quiet discipline of care. The truth is, most seniors aren't falling because they're old. They're falling because no one told them how to hold themselves up. Martha learned. And now, so can you. Don't wait for the stairs to scare you. Don't wait for the pain to stop you. Your legs are still listening, still waiting, still capable of strength. All they need is for you to start choosing it. Tonight.